Hello, my name is Ken Garfield and I have the privilege of serving as Director of Communications at Myers Park United Methodist Church. Welcome now to Myers Park Memories, a special video that we have produced to mark the 85th anniversary of this great church. So take 12 to 14 minutes now and enjoy the memories of four families from our congregation: Dennis Myers, Ann Maxwell, the Weatherspoons, and the Daltons. Enjoy their memories and enjoy the legacy and the love that has marked 85 years at Myers Park United Methodist Church. We are talking to Van and Kay Weatherspoon about the life of this great church as it marks its 85th anniversary. Mr. and Ms. Weatherspoon, I know you've been here since the mid-50s, I think you said. Talk about your roots, personal roots in this church, if you would.
Well, we moved here from Birmingham, Alabama in, I think, March of '58, and I don't know how we came. We were both raised Methodist. We're both from Durham, and we had friends here. I don't think we ever considered another Methodist church, so that's how we got here. And
what struck you about this church when you're looking back now? What really struck a chord with you all here at this church?
I think the first thing, Ken, is that we had friends that were coming here. There were 3 or 4 couples that we knew before we moved back to Charlotte. I moved to Charlotte, and that was, I think, our first introduction to the church. And we knew that you had a great children's program here, and we had one on the way plus one already here, and we felt that this would be a good place for our children.
Right.
And it's proved to be correct. It's been a wonderful experience.
Is it a combination of both the worship as well as the beauty of the campus and the beauty of the buildings and the sanctuary? Talk about that. Is it kind of a blend of the two?
I think the beauty of the sanctuary, I think sometimes we almost take for granted the beauty of it. And having 2 daughters who married outside of this church, just when their families came in for the wedding, how struck they were with the beauty of the church. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you would read about people coming to the corner out there at night to look up at the window.
Yeah, we were talking with someone else for this about coming south on Providence and seeing the lights of the sanctuary at night. It's really one of the beautiful views of Charlotte, isn't it?
It is. It is.
It really is.
Yeah. Now, we talked a little bit before about some of your individual ministries that you all have been involved in. Mrs. Weatherspoon, you had the bravery to keep the 2-year-olds?
Well, the 2-year-olds, and that was fun, but I had excellent help, and that was a lot of fun. And then we did the 9th graders for 2 years. That was a challenging experience for us.
As this campus has grown with some of the capital projects on the campus, were you involved in the working on this parish life building expansion?
Yes, I was involved. I was the liaison between the church and the contractor. So I was meeting with the contractor on a weekly basis and checking on things and trying to point out things that I thought were wrong that should be corrected. But we were still friends at the end, so I guess that tells you that things went well.
What do you think this addition has meant over the last 6 or 7 years to the life of the church?
I can't imagine where we'd be without it. I think as soon as we completed the building and opened it up, it was completely full, mainly with Sunday school classes and things like that.
Right.
And it's just been a wonderful addition, and it fits right in with the rest of the church. As you may know, the new addition was almost as large as the Sunday school rooms and building for the original structure.
Mm-hmm. One thing I definitely want to ask you about is as folks climb the stairs to Jubilee Hall and are impressed by these 2 incredible paintings by the Russian artist Korzhev, and those were gifts from your family, were they not?
Yes, they were.
Talk about that. What moved you to do that?
Well, actually, our first introduction to Russian paintings was by our daughter who lives in Minneapolis, outside of Minneapolis, and she told me about the Museum for Russian Art, which displays only Russian art. And one day when we were going back to the airport to fly back to Charlotte, she took us by the museum, and we spent 20 or 30 minutes there walking around pretty quickly. And I just fell in love with some of the artwork. There was a guy named Geli Korshev. His spelling is K-O-R-Z-H-E-V. And Geli, I understood at the time, was 83, 84. And in his better days, his younger days, when his talent was really blooming, he did a lot of work. And I just fell in love with his work. And we bought, as a matter of fact, a booklet on his work, and I brought it back and I shared it with James Howell, and James sort of liked it too, and he says, you know, I've always wanted some artwork in our church, and that I've got one place I'd like to hang a painting. So I started calling the man who owned the museum and was supplying all the artwork for the museum, and in the meantime, James came back to me and said, I found another place. I need 2 paintings. And I said, James, it's just like a dookie. You won't let me finish one project for you to give me a second one.
As we approach the 85th anniversary of the church, and you all have been in Charlotte a long time, for those who aren't members of the church and may not be familiar with it, what would you like people to know about this church?
Well, I would like for them to know that it's a friendly and warm church. That yes, it is a large church, but consequently it has a lot of programs and things going on. And I think anybody who's thinking about changing churches or perhaps coming to town initially and finding a church, there's plenty going on here that they can find that they will enjoy. And you'll see that the church could become a very important part of their life.
Good. We are talking with Ann Maxwell about the history and heritage of this great church as it marks its 85th anniversary, for a video to share with the congregation and the community about the life of this great church. Tell us about the history of this church in your life and how it became part of your upbringing.
Well, my family lived on Beverly Drive when I was a small child, and during the 30s. And my first memory of the church is holding my father's hand and walking around and watching the Luther Snyder building being built. We did this on Sundays after going to Sunday school. In those days, you went to Sunday school, we had log cabins on the property that we used for Sunday school rooms. And after we built the Luther Snyder building, those log cabins were used for scout activities in the afternoons. And Ms. Akers was one of my scout leaders at one point. And so, you know, I remember those types of things.
So you came to Sunday school and worship as a child?
Yes.
Yeah. What are your memories of Sunday mornings here in this church? What kind of stands out for you?
It was just everybody was a friend. You know, it's hard to explain because it was a small church. I mean, we weren't large like we are today. It was just different. I mean, the Methodists in our area were just different. I mean, the conference was held in Charlotte, and when the conference came to town, families like ours housed the ministers in their homes during conference, and conference met at First Church downtown. But my mother always had a minister or two in the household with us. And it was part of our lives. I mean, my mother was always a chair of a circle, and she started a new circle every year. She fixed flowers for the sanctuary every Saturday morning. And even as a child, I would come with her to fix flowers for the sanctuary. That's just one of those things that people did, you know.
Right. Well, now as we're celebrating our 85th anniversary, and we hope that a lot of folks in the community will learn a little bit more about our church, what do you want people to know about it? What should they know about this great church?
That we work hard, that we save a lot of money, and we try to spend it all on those who are less fortunate. That whether they're less fortunate in monetary ways or whether they are suffering from some loss or some misfortune, that the church is always here to help.
Right. and we're talking to one of the 2 surviving charter members of the church, Dennis Myers, Jr., who was 10 years old in 1925 when this great church was founded. Mr. Myers, I know you have rich memories of growing up in this church.
It was a part of my life.
What do you remember about the area at the time when it was when this church was founded? It wasn't like it was now, was it?
No, not a bit. It was a grocery store here, and streetcar came here. That was the same thing, streetcar. Right. Going north, it wasn't paved, and going west, east, it wasn't paved.
And this church has just sort of nurtured you through the years, and the place where you raised your family?
Oh, it's part of our life.
We are talking with Bob and Gwin Dalton about the life of the church and their long involvement in the flourishing congregation and ministry life of our church. Talk about your roots in our church and when and how you first got involved in our church.
Well, I first got involved in the church because I lived up here on the corner, Queens and Oxford Place, and this church was organized by a group of men from the Uptown Methodist Church. They started organizing in Queens College, and they finally put it down here. And they bought a piece of property down here, and it was an old grocery store. You've heard this story many times, I'm sure. My first involvement with the church was walking down to the grocery store with my daddy and mother to buy a loaf of bread. It's still a grocery store. Buy a loaf of bread and bring it up to the house and have toast the next morning. I had to make a congregation report on a communion Sunday about 1980. I said, something to me, how life has not changed. Just come down to this little grocery store to buy a loaf of bread. Didn't realize it was very similar to buying a loaf of bread for life. You come to communion, you give a loaf of bread for life. Still serving the same thing today, but it's a spiritual loaf today.
The bread of life.
Bread of life, that's right. And that was my earliest remember being in the church.
Well, you know, we're approaching the 85th anniversary of this church, and we're hoping that that wonderful milestone will raise attention in the community of this church. What do you hope people outside of Myers Park United Methodist, what do they need to know about this congregation and the life of this church?
But I think the congregation that we have now is the most vivacious, just full of vitality. There are a lot of young people, and they do so much, and that I wish the community knew even more how much the young people do. And there's so many ministries, so many emergencies that come up that this church jumps right in and gives so much.
We hope you enjoyed Myers Park Memories and this look back at 85 years of wonderful service here at Myers Park United Methodist Church. Copies of the video are available by contacting me here at the church, and it will also be available for viewing on our church website. Thank you.